The purpose of this presentation is to educate Volara's field installers and HVAC manufacturing departments on the extra steps all parties involved in Volara's HVAC installation production chain are required to take to meet the duct leak loss number of 5% required by California's new standard for today's home. Why is this important? Because Volara loses time and money by going back and repairing a system failing to meet California and Volara's high standard of efficiency. Second, not meeting regulations reflects poorly on Volara building systems. These new standards help California lead the nation and world in creating and implementing new standards for energy efficiency. Second, by building, installing, and guaranteeing a more efficient HVAC system, Volara does its part to reduce the carbon footprint of the modern home today, helping ensure our planet's health for future generations to enjoy. So with these factors in mind, please take note and enjoy the presentation. Before we begin, let's take a look at how a leakage test is conducted. Pictured is the machine used to perform the duct leak test. First, we block off the vents and openings of the home's HVAC system. Next, we connect the test unit's blower. Now, we tape the sensor into one of the other vents. Now we are ready to test. Using a sliding scale, taking into account the variables of unit size, duct size, and home size. Now you may be thinking, why does this matter to me? I do my job perfectly. It is the other guy's work who is causing the test to fail. Our hope is after you sit through our presentation, you will be able to recognize the particular set of problems that faces each department. You will be able to recognize where and why problems arise, and more importantly, you will understand how to fix the problem. Before we begin, it is important to note that most of the time there isn't one large leak causing a system to fail. Usually leaks amongst the entire system are what cause a system to fail, pointing towards sloppy installation and manufacturing of the system in general. In this presentation, we are going to cover the many pieces along the way that can contribute to a system's failure. Furthermore, by following the steps and techniques illustrated, we will ensure a Title 24 compliant duct leakage loss score of 5% or less with every HVAC system we install, since failure costs money, time, and damage to Volara's reputation for the workmanship amongst the builders and our community. When installing HVAC systems in the home today, there are 6 different types of building materials that you will run into when installing the HVAC system. These 6 materials are sheet metal, flex ducting, PVC, drywall, wood, and aluminum covered foam board. When dealing with ducting during the manufacturing stages of production, it is important to use the staging table as much as possible. The purpose of the staging table is to prevent punctures and tears from occurring during the measuring and cutting stages of production. The staging table also prevents kinks and deformation of the ducting during these stages of the process. It is important to be careful when moving and transporting these materials, since they are easily damaged. The punctures may be small, but they can add up to put a system over the edge into fail territory. If you see a hole or something you think might cause a problem later on, please take the time to fix it right then. We can't rely on the next person to catch the problem. These systems are sometimes installed in tight places, making it hard for the installers to catch all the punctures and leaks that may be present. When applying plastic ducting tape, it is important to wrap the tape tight, but not too tight, as the tape will contract and pull itself apart. We want the tape to be applied tight enough to the ducting to be airtight and always wrap around at least twice. This rule applies whenever ducting tape is used. Cast coat is generally known as mastic and is used to secure crucial weak points in the system's connections that must remain airtight. Cast coat's most important feature is its ability to fill in crevices and spaces with a coating that cures to a hard shell. When applying cast coat, it is important to apply it evenly and liberally. This stuff is liquid insurance against leaks later on. It can also be used to cover butyl tape connections that may become weak, or may already be weak, as seen pictured. When applying tape, it is important to apply it as flatly and evenly as possible, before finally rubbing the tape onto the surface using pressure. Butyl tape is used to ensure high-pressure seams do not spring leaks. The final fastening technique an installer will use is to hang ducting using nails or staples. We want to bring attention to these fastening techniques because the misplacement or misuse of these fasteners can create potential puncture hazards for soft ducting and foam board, so be on the lookout. Now that we have covered all of the joints that may need to be made to install the HVAC system properly, let's cover the specific components of the HVAC system. This is important since certain HVAC components must be joined a certain way regardless of the materials being joined. This is to ensure proper connection of components that may be temperamental due to air pressure, air temperature, or material used. We will cover each joint down the line of a typical HVAC unit. First, we have the AC unit. Next, we connect to the furnace. The furnace is connected to our coil, and from our coil we go to the plenum box, which then connects to the ducting that routes the air throughout our house. In each room we have a vent can that butts up against the sheetrock of our ceiling. Finally, we go out to the vent grate on the other side of the sheetrock, which is used to finish the terminal inside the room as well as direct air to a desired location. Now that we have our HVAC system laid out, let's cover the individual component connections and what their purposes are. First, let's take a look at the most crucial point for leakage in a typical HVAC system. Of course, we are talking about the plenum box. Let's take a look and see how our plenum boxes are manufactured here in the warehouse. First, we cut a hole in the plenum box and then insert the collar. Here's a picture of a typical plenum box once it has been installed. Once the plenum box has been installed, we coat the seams of the collars with cast coat mastic. Once the plenum box is installed in the field, the installer will then paint over the collar with mastic. First, James is going to show us how mastic is typically applied, which can become problematic as gaps are left between the plenum box and the collar, allowing air to escape. Now let's watch as James finishes applying cast coat the correct way. Notice how you can barely see the difference between the plenum and the collar. Next, we come to our components. The furnace and coil are connected with butyl tape, and then over that goes a layer of cast coat. This connection is crucial and remains under high pressure while the system is on. By using butyl tape and cast coat, we ensure this connection is secure and will not break down over time. Let's listen to our duct leakage technician explain some of the more common problems faced at the furnace to coil joint.
Sometimes it depends on the type of furnace, usually Lennox's or Goodman's. The connection between the coil and the furnace, there's a gap where, in other words, where this foam part is, you'll see a little bit of a gap, and that's a leakage. And so depending on whether or not there's a blow, the burner, you don't want to put tape next to the burner, but so that's the challenge of it. But if it's reversed, where it's the blower and not the burner, then if you feel that there's air leakage, then we usually put a tape there to stop it. What I've noticed too is that sometimes when they connect, they'll use screws, and it will push up against that plate, and which will create that gap.
Next, we will cover another crucial point in the HVAC system that can easily cause a system to fail: the duct can sheetrock vent grate assembly. Let's watch our technician properly install a vent grate. Pay close attention to the placement of the tape and the extent to which he overlaps it onto the sheetrock under the vent finish, since not allowing enough tape here can cause the tape to come undone, which is a crucial point for leakage and can easily cause a system to fail. Also pay close attention to how persistent he is at getting the butyl tape firmly adhered to the sheetrock and the can. This is important since sheetrock is porous and can cause leaks to occur. So great, you've just finished your HVAC unit install, right? Wrong. Before we call it quits, we need to complete the most important step in our duct leakage loss prevention plan. We need to review our work to make sure there are no leaks or punctures in the HV system we just installed. Now let's watch as our technician patches a typical hole in a plenum box. Also pay close attention to how persistent he is at getting the butyl tape firmly adhered. Now let's watch as our technician patches a typical hole in a plenum box butyl tape seam, since these seams can become worn out as the plenum box ages. Another sweet spot to look for leaks are the tape seams of the furnace doors. These furnace doors can vary between make and model. So at the end, we will listen to a word from James, our technician, to hear what he has to say about the differences between these models. Sheet metal is much harder to puncture and most seams are perfect. However, there still may be areas that can cause a system to fail. Let's take a look as our technician points out some of the typical weak spots in sheet metal seams. When it comes to sheet metal cans, our technician James has a couple of words of caution. Let's listen.
When it comes to cans that are pre-made, the issues that we have is we're not sure if this is taped on the outside because there's sheetrock. So we have to take time to open this register, the grill, and Casco on the inside. So if they can Casco it already, and have that, get that in the practice of Cascoing it, then we don't have to do that. And then also these holes make, if these holes that are on the sheet metal, that's also an air leakage. So we'll have to put butyl tape around it to cover it.
The fifth place to look for possible leaks or punctures is the plastic ducting seams. When it comes to furnace doors, some are better than others. Let's listen to James talk about the finer points of furnace door sealing now.
This foam gets pressed down, so even though there's this foam, it won't create that proper seal that we would like it to as duct testers.
Finally, let's watch and see how our technician tapes up the doors of the furnace unit to prevent leakage from here as well. Note that he is using foil tape since it isn't nearly as sticky as butyl tape, making reopening the furnace quite easy. He also leaves a strip of tape for the next person who reopens the system to reseal the door with. This is our Velara Touch. As our technician will now explain, some furnaces are actually a door covered by another door. But as our technician will explain, the concept is still the same.
And then it'll have a cover. So the furnace door is similar to just a regular door. So on the inside, and usually they'll have, again, foam around the actual furnace door, but if that, doesn't get, if it gets damaged or if it just, the foam part just gets smashed, you're gonna have leakage. So it's essentially the same thing as taking, getting the door, putting it on, and putting butyl tape or foil tape around it and making a good seal.
Most furnaces leave an intake for wires. However, these may leak valuable CFMs during the testing phase. Let's listen to James explain how to correct this situation.
A part where you can put in your wires, and sometimes there's also one for the other side. So also check on the bottom to see if there's a hole, because then you gotta cover that up because that's also leakage.
Pictured are a couple more of the typical sweet spots for leakage reduction. Now let's watch and see how James butyl tapes the seams of the PVC pipes for the drip tray, an often overlooked and sensitive area for leakage. Lastly, James, our technician, has a few last pearls of wisdom concerning the sealing of all holes on a furnace during the testing phase of the duct system.
With this particular coil, I've noticed that you'll have puncture holes for the condensate, but it will also have the same puncture holes on the other side. So if it is not taped off, that's going to create an air leakage as well. And depending on, taping it off is easy, but depending on how much room we have in the attic, makes it a little bit harder, and that could be part of our leakage for the CFMs that could get us to pass.
Notice how our tech has butyl taped up the drainage release PVC and poked a hole to continue allowing air to escape, just not nearly as much. Once all of the holes have been patched up, the job is now complete. Now let's go to lunch.